Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to RaceSpotTV and back to Friday night primetime. It's down to the final two of 2023 season number 1. We've travelled around the world and well, now we only have 2 races left. How time flies when you're having fun. Tonight though, we take to Belle, Detroit. And it takes Tight and Twisty to the absolute next level. Expect carnage, chaos, and a good bit of strategy in the mix as well. It will be myself, Zach Sweeney, Cameron Roger, alongside me with EQ Maricala on the production to bring you everything that comes our way. And, well, Cam, tonight is really going to be a tricky one. Probably one of the toughest of the season yet.
Yeah, it's a very difficult track here at Detroit Belle. It's certainly one of the more difficult ones sort of in the world, let alone just on the calendar, on the 12 race calendar we've had here for season 1 of 2023. It's tight, it's twisty, there's walls everywhere, and getting your own car around the track can be difficult sometimes, let alone having 3 classes trying to find some space. It's definitely going to be an interesting one.
It is indeed, and as I said, we are on to the penultimate round of Season 1. We started all the way back in December of last year, and we've travelled around, well, at least in terms of broadcast, through the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Magny Cours, Daytona, Long Beach, Virginia, Nürburgring Road America, now Detroit, and in a week's time we'll take to Sebring to see off season number 1. And well, we look forward to continuing for season 2. Of course, I'm sure a new vote will be brought up. Of course, Friday Night Primetime is directed by you. You decide what series we take to for the entire season. And well, if you want to get involved for season 2, do head yourself over to the RaceSpotTV Discord. And well, when the vote goes up, take to it and well, have your say. But as it stands, we're into qualifying in the final 3 minutes of it. As it stands in the BMWs, Christian Hillgard leads the way. Jari Leitinen in the LMP2s and Buemi in the GTDs. Only a 10th player actually of the number 4 machine just in behind. And well, Cam, we're talking about how difficult it is to overtake. Well, then surely this qualifying session is going to be mightily important.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a tricky track to overtake, that's for sure. The traffic is going to be a big factor in that, though. So even if you're not necessarily the fastest driver in your class, if you're good through the traffic, you can definitely make up some time. But of course, just overtaking general can be difficult. Therefore, you want to be getting that track position early, and in that qualifying session is obviously where you can do that. But just a couple of laps around a very tricky track is a difficult one to put down, a heater and really getting yourself up to the top of the time screen. So it's definitely going to be a difficult one for the drivers to do that. There's, as we said earlier, there's the walls all around you, but there are some quite big curbs here as well. You've got to be very careful where you're placing your car, especially over the bumps as well. There's a lot to think about around this track.
There is very much is a driver's track. You look to your left, there's a wall. You look to the right, there's a wall. You look in front of you, and well, there's not too many in terms of long straights, so you probably look in front of you and you can see a wall. You are surrounded by them, and as Cam said very rightly, the massive curbs will be well, more than willing to completely launch your car sky high if you give it the chance to, particularly, of course, in the prototypes and, well, even in the GTDs as well. Into the final moments of qualifying then, and, well, probably the final chances for those still out on track to set their final times. But just look at how close the driver is getting to the wall. It's literally zero margin for error. You've got the track, then you've got the barrier. If you make a mistake, that is your race pretty much in the bin.
It certainly is, and we've seen this multiple times in real life, and also on iRacing as well. If you just go slightly off the track, just slightly into the wall, you get a bit of a toe. Just bang the wheel up against the wall, you get a bit of toe damage, and then your car just starts crabbing down the straights. Your steering's a bit bent, and all that sort of stuff. It just makes it even harder, and those things can snowball with just all the little taps of the wall as you go throughout the race. So definitely something that drivers do need to think about. But at the same time, you have to push around a circuit like this. There's a lot of time to be gained in the tight and twisty parts of the track, but it's certainly difficult here coming through around the fountain sequence as well, up towards the final couple of corners. It's a very narrow track, and therefore the racing line is very narrow and very hard to pinpoint sometimes.
Looking at the lap times for the pole in BMW and the pole in LMP2, it's only a difference of actually 1.2 seconds. What sort of effect is that going to have? Surely it means that the BMW field and the LMP2 field are going to be a lot closer than what we've seen before.
Yeah, the difference between the cars is obviously going to be a lot more neutral around here. There's a lot less sort of faster corners and longer straights where the BMW M Hybrid V8 can stretch its legs and really show its dominance. So therefore, as you say, that 1.5 seconds, you sort of have to average that over the length of the track as well. And it's still a very short track at just under 4 kilometers long, just over 2 miles. So it's very, very little. It's only going to be a tenth here or there. And therefore, as you say, they might actually become a factor into some of the BMWs.
For sure, particularly if there is some early race carnage. It'll definitely be a lot harder for the BMWs to work their way forward. But talking you through the grid order then, the GTDs first up. Daniel Satili takes pole position. James Boomy just alongside. 11,000 separate our front row with Lauren DeRuyck just in behind in P3. Mark Fletcher joins him on the second row of the grid. Matthew Warner, your top 5 with Felipe Pascal there in 6th. The Brazilian there, rounding off in the top 6, of course. Then comes the 24 machine of Gregory Berlingzi in P7. Jack Sanchez alongside him there in 8th. Adam Watson and Mason Smith, your top 10 with Philip Harold, Garrett Wilburn 11th and 12th. The 6th row of the field, only a second covering the top 12 in the GTDs. Dubitsch in P13, Kevin Playton P14, then just in behind Magnus Nielsen, Colin and McCarthy 15th and 16th. Carl Boss, Will Robertson round off row number 9. And well, there we go. I think that is it for the GTDs, or is it even more? Even more. It's going to carry on going just for funsies. The 25 machine P19, then comes Appenstrom in P23 with Javalainen P21. And there we go. That is the end of the field for the GTDs. A very, very long one here in top split. Now looking upwards to the Dallara P217. And once again, quite close in all fairness. It's the Finn, a very Leitonen, the 118.691 that takes pole position. Paul Darling will join him on the front row. John Evans, Valentin Bonney still looking for their first victory on Friday night primetime, rounds off the second row of the field. Remco Barlow, Martin de Jong 5 and 6 for the LMP2s. No, a slightly shorter grid in terms of the LMP2s. Here we go, the final 2 rows. Stephen Phillips, Luke Mann, Matthew Sadokis, Trivet, and the 31 machine rounding off the top 10 and the final grid slot for the Dallara P217s. And well, finally we get to the big boys of the BMW M Hybrid V8. Christian Hilgard takes pole position. Paulo Alexandra Lopez P2. Then comes Alan Murray and James Bradley 3 and 4. Andreas Friedrich rounds off your top 5 with Stephanie Van Halle, your 6th place person on the field. And rounding off the 4th and final row, Daniel Radness and Joshua Ahern 7th and 8th. To be fair, Cam, a fairly stacked grid. Maybe not the strength of field that we've usually become accustomed to in Friday Night Primetime, but still some big names, still some recognisable names from this series. And we'll couple that with a pretty tight and twisty circuit, and we're in for a good race.
Absolutely. 45 minutes of action coming your way as we come around the final couple of kinks to start off the penultimate round of the season.
We do indeed. Well, the race is about to get itself underway. Green flag is waved, and we are a go for round 11 of the IMSA iRacing Series in season number 1. Christian Hilgard leads the way for the BMWs, followed by, of course, Paulo Alexandra Lopez, Alan Murray in P3. Everyone just trying to find their way through. A fight for third, though, raging on. That is James Bradley trying to move his way up onto the podium, but no way through. Just in behind there as well, you've got Stefan Van Halle and Andreas Friedrich. The LMP2s are underway as well, and very much a more chaotic start to the inside. That's the undercut sim racing driver trying to have a bit of a look to the inside. John Evans taking the lead, but Jura Leitonen contacting behind. That's Valentin Bonney having a bit of a spin. More carnage as the GTDs get themselves underway as well. And well, this is the early lap carnage that we were talking about, Cam. Valentin Bonney, an early crash, and easily done when it comes to Belle Isle.
And despite the gap between the classes that we have at the start to avoid some of the carnage, as you say, GTDs getting involved there with the LMP2s. We get James Bradley there dropping down into 4th place in the LMP2 field already, as we're starting to see some of the drivers trying to work their way into a bit of a single file pattern. Or of course, obviously in the BMWs, not the LMP2s. My bad, but as Alan Murray there was getting up into that 3rd place, and it's going to be interesting to see if some of the faster LMP2s actually get up involved with these BMWs as well as they start fighting. As then Van Halle there dropping down into that 6th place. Already some moves coming in, but as you see, it's very tight racing around here and very difficult to make moves. But the person on that first lap, though, was John Evans getting up to the front.
It was indeed. And an interesting point you bring up about the LMP2s. I was looking at the time sheets in qualifying and, well, actually going defensive from Jere Leitonen, the undercut sim racing driver, who's having a bit of a look in towards turn number 1. A very short pitch straight here at Belle Isle, but the LMP2s in qualifying, I was a bit confused. I thought there was something wrong as well. One of the BMWs is going pretty slowly. Is that Joshua Ahern maybe having a bit of an off through the straight towards 3 and 4? Indeed it is. But in qualifying, the LMP2s were a bit staggered amongst the BMWs, and I thought, hang about, surely there's got to be something wrong here, because there's no way the the LMP2s are mixing it up in the BMW field, but no, it was the case. And it is just the fact that the LMP2s and the BMWs are so close because, in all fairness, Cam, aerodynamically, there's not much that separates them. It's the straight line speed that's the big divider.
Yeah, the separation from the top to the bottom in each class, as you say, sort of overlaps at a track like this. And you're right, there was 5 LMP2s ahead of the slowest BMW. So, of course, how we have it, we have the separated classes on the grid, and then even there's sort of a 5-second gap in between each of the classes as well to try and help that out. But as we see the race progress, we might see these LMP2s get on the back of the BMW field. Would you be yeah, very interesting one, especially when it comes to traffic as well, because even though they might be slower on lap time, the BMW still have that bit of an extra kick out of some of the corners, which can make it a little bit tricky in some situations. But John Evans comes around to lead the second lap as well. 45 minutes of action. We're going to be getting about 35 laps here at Belle today. So a lot of laps around this short track.
It is indeed. It really is short and sharp, and you really do tick off the laps very quickly. As Cam said, looking for about 35. Luke Mann, as it stands in the number 20 LMP2, trying to hang on to, or actually move his way up ahead of Skulik there, just in front of him, of course, in that fight in LMP2. They run their way through in towards turn 3 and turn 4 with still 41 minutes left on the clock. We're still very much in the early stages of this race, but I guess we're expecting a race of attrition. These guys, we're not seeing any drastic moves or anything like that now the race has calmed down. It's surely just got to be a case of getting to the end and seeing where you finish because, well, as Joshua Hearn and Valentin Boni found out in the opening moments, it can very easily go wrong.
Yeah, certainly can. Let's see a replay of a Hearn here coming through turns 1 and 2. Just, wow, way too fast there. Understeers completely off turn 1. Makes the contact with the wall twice, actually, and then comes to a stop. Very dangerous place, actually, on the exit of turn 2 there. But, yeah, just showing you how easy it is to make the mistakes. It's a very fast, committed track. But if you just get it slightly wrong, you are in the wall and your race will pretty much be coming to an end. Because even if you do get back out on track, you're going to be a couple of laps down after the damage repairs.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly at a short circuit like Belle Isle, it is a very tricky circuit. And while it is only 45 minutes in length, this race, it very much is a test of endurance, a test of stamina, and a test of your concentration as you try to negotiate the very tricky, very bumpy street circuit. I remember watching some onboards around this circuit, and it got to a case of some people in single seaters, their hands were forced off the steering wheel going into corners because of the bumps. And I think, while obviously that's not going to be fully replicated in the world of iRacing, it just goes to add on to the fact that this event, this circuit is so difficult, so physically demanding. I mean, even in the virtual world, when it comes to sort of force feedback settings and things like that, it's very tricky. And you can visually see it. Jere Leitonen, now just behind John Evans, that car is all over the place over the bumps.
Yeah, and that's difficult to control for the drivers as well because it's slightly unpredictable if the car's sort of doing those things. I guess with a bit of muscle memory and a bit of practice, you might get used to where the bumps are, but it still is obviously a little bit more unsettling when you have the car moving around like that because you really have to have some confidence in the car, especially in the prototype classes where you have the downforce as well. You need a settled car for the aero to do its work, and it can be a bit awkward when you go into some corners. But here's Valentin Boni actually, I think it's on the first lap maybe, coming down the back straightaway, getting a car to his left, 2 cars to his left actually, now down towards the braking zone. Where's the contact going to be? Potentially, it was actually on the apex as well, getting squeezed into the tyre barrier, and because he was hit on the rear end, going for a spin.
Yeah, I mean, that could have easily been avoided, in my opinion. I mean, not necessarily Valentin Boni's fault, more the fact that the wall does protrude out slightly, and if it wasn't the case, then maybe they both could have gotten away with it. But hey, that's not how the circuit's laid out, so that's not how the cookie crumbled, unfortunately. Martin de Jong trying to make some progress back towards the front of the LMP2 field. At the moment, sitting 8th, and we're just trying to negotiate their way through the GTD field, which, as we said, I mean, we've been to quite some open traction, the likes of the Nürburgring, Road America to some degree as well. Not too bad in terms of it, quite wide and has some margin for error. The traffic lapping has been, relatively easy for these guys, and now they've got a bit of a shock in the fact that it's not necessarily just a case of, oh, there's a car, I'm going to overtake it straight away. You really do have to actively take yourself back, compose yourself, and think as to how you're going to get past the traffic.
It's definitely one where you have to use your instincts a little bit more, I would say, because just the way that the corners work and they come at you, and the speed difference between the two classes, even around a shorter track like this, we're looking at about 8 seconds or so already to the GTDs being slower. So there's quite a lot of time that we can obviously visually see the difference in those cars, and therefore the gaps come up quickly. And as a prototype driver, you've got to be ready to quickly dive down the inside or make a reactive move. As we come back to P19 here in the GTD field, as Javalainen there losing the run out of this back straightaway, the 35 machine there coming back all the way down. Robertson, that is, cursing to the outside now. This is going to be a difficult move. He's on the outside for the braking zone as well, as Javalainen there holds it to the inside line and manages to defend that one.
Beautifully done, Javalainen, knowing where to put the car. Paul Darling into the pit lane, was on the front row, I believe, of the LMP2s, and unfortunately taking a premature pit stop. Doesn't look to be involved in any damage or anything like that, so maybe just could be an early pit stop potentially. But back to the fight at the front between John Evans and Jere Lehtinen, who has started on pole, of course, did the #1 machine, but unfortunately fallen back to John Evans. And well, as soon as, I mean, they say races can't be won on lap 1, but maybe they can definitely be lost, because Jere Lehtinen has definitely taken a big step back in that progress in the early stages. Maybe he is quicker than John Evans over the entirety of the race, but looking at the rear end of that 27 machine just in front of him, surely is going to start to get frustrating, particularly as there is no way through. Losing the lead on that opening lap has probably cost him maybe half a race, even maybe the entire race of progress, that he now has to try and claw back, purely because he didn't get the best of starts.
Yeah, the starts are definitely crucial, of course, especially around track like this. We were mentioning it earlier in the qualifying, how track position can be so important. Potentially, you're quicker than the driver, but if you can't get past, you can't get past. And with the shortest straights around it, even that back straightaway there between turns 2 and 3, it's not the longest run in the world, and you really have to try and get some momentum there. As we're looking, is that Friedrich there having a bit of a battle up towards the top 5 of the BMWs as well. Down this back straightaway, kinking sort of braking zone as well, coming towards the left-hand side. He's got a Radness all over the back, and this is actually really for one of the final places, only really top 7 BMWs as it stands. Friedrich trying to go a little bit wide there actually, and not really enjoying it as it stands, because that's a very tight part of the track. You don't want to be going too wide.
Yeah, it's tricky. You got to get the move done at the simplest convenience, really, as a driver. You don't want to risk it, because how easily it can go wrong. Maybe, yes, the opportunity is on, but if you see a gap, it doesn't necessarily mean you can go for it, purely because you're putting a lot of trust in that other driver. You're trusting them with your race. But we tick off yet another lap, and Daniel Moradnes through turns 1 and through turn 2. A bit of a wave of traffic just in front of them, and well, this is getting very, very busy. The BMWs lapping the GTDs for the first time. James Bradley trying to make some advances as well, only about 0.3 of a second in that fight for the podium versus Alan Murray, who's just in front of him there. Not really much separating them, but both through the traffic cleanly. That's going to be an interesting dynamic as the race progresses. We've got these couplets and packs of cars that are all in the same class, and as soon as they hit a wave of traffic, like at any other circuit, it can really throw a spanner into the works.
Yeah, things can spread out or close off very quickly. Oh, that's a massive crash halfway down the back straightaway. I do not understand how that has happened, because you do not see cars spinning when you're already at that sort of speed, but that was losing it all the way out of the corner. Definitely some damage on Friedrich's car there. Definitely want to see that one again. Cannot turn left or right, I should say, as the left-hand wheel is completely cooked and getting involved with the race leaders of the LMP2 as well.
That was sketchy, to say the absolute least, and well, it's caused a bit of a blockage as they run their way through the quadruple left-hander complex, I think, at turn 7, 8, 9 and 10, of course. And well, this is a bit of a spanner in the works for things. Andreas Friedrich escaping back to the pit lane, and it'll be interesting to see if we can take a look as to how that happened again. But John Evans, Jere Lehtinen still leading the way in LMP2, so thankfully no harm, no foul. But a couple of people definitely shaken by that. I don't really know. Maybe it was with good intention. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't think it was out of malice per se, more so a panic, because when you're in that position, you've got a lack of control in your car. You're trying to be as predictable as possible. Unfortunately, in doing so, he in turn actually turned all the way to the left-hand side. Talk us through it just again, Cam, because that was...
Yeah, so got on the acceleration, had some X out of the corner, tried to go to the right, then flick back to the left and just completely unsettled the car. But I don't know, it's so weird to see the car lose the grip like that. It must have been a big jolt to the left on the steering wheel, and this was the bit that was a bit awkward, just complete miscommunication there. And was that actually Evans? at the front of P2. I'm pretty sure it might have been having some contact there, so that might be having some factors in as we come back to Evans. Actually, I'm pretty sure it was, looking at the liveries of the cars that were involved there, with lighting all over the back, just showing you that part of the track can be so difficult, but Evans must be running with a bit of damage because there was definitely a decent chunk of contact.
There was indeed. Fortunately, they'd already done the large portion of slowing the car down, but again, it doesn't take a lot of speed to damage the car. And well, I mean, all it takes is the slightest bit of wheel geometry knocked out of alignment. I mean, we saw it to a very severe case with Andreas Friedrich in terms of that front left being completely towed in to the extreme. And well, this is going to be on board with John Evans as they run their way in towards turn number 7. Just you can see Friedrich just in front. If you're John Evans, how do you react? I think actually he got away with it. It was only the slight tap to the wall there after the correction that actually saw any contact. I think if he's lucky, he might have gotten away with that scot-free. Yeah.
On first look, I definitely thought there was a bit more contact than what we just saw on that replay as well. So as you say, might be lucky with that, and he's holding on to the lead. So he's definitely doing a good job with that one, but certainly a scary moment. And to be fair, from that onboard, he did the right thing. The car was going, the BMW was going to the right, so he had to go to the left, but they just both went left at the exact same time. Very bad sort of body language between them, because of course you can't really speak to them as such. Just got to do your instincts and see what's ahead of you. But certainly a very scary moment where when you're in the race lead in a very tight battle as well. And it's actually working out quite well for him through this bits of traffic, just gaining a few car lengths there, but then it all comes back as he gets stuck behind the Audi there with a couple of corners to go this lap.
Well, it does definitely depend as to when you catch the traffic, and John Evans getting a car between himself and Yuri Layton. There's the race leader. Oh no, it's not actually. It's Stephen Phillips there. I do apologise. Third place in the LMP2s. He's about 4.8 seconds behind P1 and P2 in the LMP2 class. Flash the headlights, of course, to tell that Lamborghini to get out of his way. There's Yuri Layton trying to get past the Ferrari and losing a good 1.7 seconds off the race leader, John Evans. Literally in the span of, what, 2-3 corners behind the Ferrari?
Yeah, that was very difficult part. Obviously, the final couple of corners is tight, and then turn 1 and 2 as well, just getting stuck behind. And as we mentioned, it's not just necessarily about because like this part of the track is quite wide, but other parts of the track, such as the final couple of corners, turn 1, 2, that sequence, the racing line itself through the corners is actually very narrow. There's not much you can do if you get stuck behind someone. As we're going to get another replay here, got Bomi coming down the back straight away, slowing down quite a bit in that number 6 machine, letting quite a few cars go back past him up towards the inside of turn 3. Loads of contact there with the Audi, and just a very awkward sequence of events.
I think that was quite clever actually from James Bomi, because he saw the sort of the hazard perception of, well, if I let them through, then they're going to stop the car in front of me, and if I don't, then maybe this could end pretty badly. They're going side by side as it is and towards turn 3, so just let them through, let them overtake the previous race leader, Daniel Satili, and was like, well, cool, awesome, gap on the inside, I'm going to follow him through. And there you go, there's the number 6 machine up into the race lead. Fantastic awareness and observational skills being shown by the Audi, who now gets himself up into the race lead. A second clear now of Daniel Satili. And when it comes to tracks like these, you have to pull antics like that. I mean, it's not necessarily antics, but you have to try something different like that, because conventional moves don't work. You have to be clever.
Yeah, and using the traffic to your advantage is the thing to do. When the opportunity comes ahead of you, you've got to absolutely go through those doors. That's open for you as we're starting to get a couple of pitters there in the LMP2s, which is interesting. We mentioned this before, Zach, how it's a 45-minute race, but there's a reduced tank. So roughly you're looking about half an hour for a full tank, which means you have to pit for 15 minutes. So some pit after 15 minutes, top the tank up and then go to the end. And some do it the opposite. They go for 30 minutes and then fill up just 15 minutes of fuel and then go to the end. So the sort of the two strategies, you see the early stoppers and the late stoppers, and it looks like some people are trying the early stoppers, maybe trying to get out of the traffic and have some clean air.
I've got to hope they don't meet to the sort of the LMP2s, the GTD traffic just in behind. And of course, with it being a short track and a long pit stop, the pit stop times don't necessarily change in terms of refueling. But of course, maybe a variation of a couple of seconds here or there. But the fact that it is a short circuit does mean you might actually find yourself ending up in a bit of traffic that you might not necessarily have wanted to. So you really do have to be clever. In terms of the reduced tanks, I believe it's 80% for the BMWs, 85% for the LMP2s, and 45% for the GTDs, just to really spice things up when it comes to a 45-minute shootout to the end, just to have that element of strategy. And it's actually been a very decisive factor over the course of this season. And I think now more so than ever are we really going to see strategy come to the limelight, whether we're going to see the early stoppers, the late stoppers coming in. I mean, from your perspective, I don't know, what would you do as a driver, Cam? Would you try to go early, or would you try to go as late as physically possible into this race?
I always am of the mindset you want to go as long as possible. Especially with how the format is here. If you stop early, realistically, you're going to start the race with a full tank of fuel, and then you're going to go down to half a tank and then top it back up full for the final half an hour, which means your average over the race, at any one point you have more fuel than if you do it the other way around, where you go from full to empty and then back up to half and then back to empty again. So on average, you've got a lot more fuel on board, and then also the longer you go, the more sort of opportunities you have to maybe nab a free pit stop as such if some issues happen with the cars around you. If you pit early, obviously you're sort of avoiding those opportunities potentially coming to you because you're stopping before they even happen. So I do always like going a bit longer into the race, just sort of opening your window, because you can pit at any point. After that, in between that middle part of the race, between 50 minutes and 30 minutes into the race, that whole window you can have open. So if you pit straight away, you're just limiting yourself in your opportunities.
I definitely do agree, but of course drivers are of a different mindset, and different things can work at different circuits. It really does come down to driver preference and circumstance. Colin McCarthy into the pit lane, of course. Again, one of the early stragglers coming into the pit lane. 26.5 minutes left to go. We're approaching 20 minutes through and approaching the halfway point actually of this race. Up though to the fight for second in the BMWs. Christian Hilgard is very much checked out with a pretty sizable lead ahead of Paulo Alexandre Lopez, but Alan Murray and James Bradley, a three-way fight for second in the top category with 26 minutes left to go. Of course, it'd be interesting to see if this is still the way they stand after the pit stops, but as it stands for now, this is looking mightily close, and actually not too far back is Daniel Moradnes either.
Yeah, this is working into a really nice battle. Actually, unfortunately, Hilgard there at the front just absolutely gone, but he also had a bit of a gap in the qualifying lap times as well. But it's good to see that the midfield battles always seem to remain pretty close in all of these Friday night primetime races that we do. We often see someone either with just a lot better experience or a lot higher iRacing just going off towards the front, but it is the cars and the battles further back that we do like to enjoy. But of course, Christian Hilgard here enjoying a 14-second lead, and we're only sort of not even halfway into the race yet, just doing a really good job so far.
He really is. He's absolutely flying out in front, and as Cam said, it's not too often that it's actually quite often, I should say, the other way around, that we get a pretty dominant lead in all three categories. I mean, we had it last time out at Road America where Sven Haas from the GTDs absolutely flew away at that round, and that's just sometimes how the cookie crumbles. But always, whether it's a fight for the lead, a fight for the podium, a fight for the top five, there is action when it comes to Friday Night Prime Time and when it comes to the IMSA iRacing series. So it very much was a good vote by the community. Originally was second place, but the original vote was only separated by a few points between the original series and of course this one that we now take to. So these guys know what they're talking about when it comes to voting. The community know the tracks in the series better than anyone. They're the ones that race in it. Well, they're definitely providing us with some fantastic action each and every Friday night. On board with Daniel Moradnes in this fight and his pursuit for second place in the BMWs. Of course, at this stage, it's quite frustrating. Nothing really you can do rather than just sit idle, maybe wait for a mistake, wait for an opportunity. Maybe if you're in Daniel Moradnes' position, you're the one that's proactive. You trigger the pit stops.
Yeah, and certainly, and that is, as I mentioned earlier, this is the point in the race where you have that flexibility. You could have a couple of laps to do so, because even though there's 24 minutes left, you still have some fuel in your tank. So you're total time of stopping should be roughly the same as everyone else. So if you want to pull the card and go early, you can definitely do that. And in a tight battle like this, it might be worth trying something like that, to be honest, to try and get a bit of an undercut if you can then have a clean outlap potentially. But let's see how this one works out. We're into the final 24 minutes of the race. Is anyone going to start thinking about coming in? I wouldn't expect, as we're seeing Wilburn there. The number 33 machine has had a bit of an accident coming through turn 1. Hopefully can rejoin the race quite nicely, but that's an awkward place to do. Got some of those BMWs coming past, very fast battles that we are just looking at there at the top of the BMW field.
Yeah, that was awkward for Garrett Hilburn. There comes second place in the BMW. Paolo Alexandre Lopez following him through, and no disruptions in terms of that fight for second. The BMWs that we were just talking about, lapping some of the GTD traffic, getting past the Porsche, and straight away looking to the inside is Alan Murray and James Bradley, trying to stay as close as possible to the number 8 machine of Lopez. But well, again, traffic gives, traffic takes. At some points we tick away nearly now, pretty much bang on in terms of the halfway point of this race, and still half of it left to go. We're now walking out of the woods and looking forward to the checkered flag, but easily done. I think those mistakes, we were definitely talking about it. It is going to be a race of attrition, and well, these guys have certainly proved that, in the sense that this track is difficult and it will bite if you give it that opportunity to do so.
Yeah, we've already had issues for cars in 3 different classes as well. Let's see this one with Wilburn, though. Has BMW pushing him through turn 1. Doesn't look like there was actually any contact, just floated that rear end, unfortunately, in the 33 machine. Just maybe taking a little bit too much speed, maybe having a bit of aero loss from the car behind as well, and just not enjoying the diffuser downforce potentially as well is a factor. As Alan Murray there coming into the pit lane for BMW is coming in a little bit early, as we said, maybe just trying to do something different to the cars around him.
Yeah, I mean, he had James Bradley just in behind him. He was trying to put some pressure on Alexandre Lopez, but no way forwards, and you've always got that looming threat of someone behind you, so it might be better to pull the trigger, get out of it, of course, but particularly with a bit of a wave of traffic just in front of you like that. And again, with the LMP2s, now it's maybe slightly more difficult for the BMWs to get their way past their fellow prototypes because of the fact that there's not that many straights around Belle Isle, and that's the biggest differentiator between the BMWs and the LMP2s. So, well, maybe he's getting himself out of the woods early and getting himself some clear air to maybe push, because it is only a difference of a couple of tenths of a second, a second and a half, 2 seconds. If he can gain that in the pit stops, he's looking fairly comfortable to move his way forward. A replay here. Luke Mann looking to the inside of the 19 machine. Contact. Oh, and there we go. Even more. Spins himself round. And, well, manages to continue on, but a bit of a knock there. What do you make of that, Cam?
I mean, turn 4 isn't necessarily an overtaking opportunity. We did see potential there. It's just so tight on the exit. You see a bit of contact. And then as we saw with a car earlier on, I can't remember who it was off the top of my head actually, but when you get a bit of contact on the rear there, it just pinches your nose and slices your nose into the wall. So yeah, not a nice position to be in, as we're getting a battle for P2 now. Bradley there diving out the inside, coming in towards turn 3, making it move up, going up into second place actually, and actually doing a really good job with that. A nice clean move. They had LMP2 ahead, but didn't really affect it too much. Just a nice slipstream move down the inside.
Probably the easiest move you're ever going to see when it comes to Belle Isle. This is Matthew Sadokis Trivet having a bit of a spin there in the 19 machine for the LMP2s, setting P5 as it stands, but of course that's not the largest LMP2 field that we've seen in some time. James Bradley lapping the undercut sim racing LMP2. I believe that is a Valentin Bonney. Of course, you can see Alexandre Lopez lapping him as well, trying to stay as close as possible, but definitely getting stuck behind just a little bit. And that car in between himself and the rest of that chasing pack is exactly what James Bradley needs now to get ahead. And this is what happened to the 19.
Yeah, so Sadokis here coming through this fountain sequence of corners. As you can see, just being held up so much with the GT3s being a lot slower, diving it down the inside and just locking the rears, I think that is. Doing a good job actually to avoid that hitting that Porsche by keeping it spinning around, but certainly yeah, just a little bit awkward, locking the rears. It looked like just diving a bit too late down the inside of that hairpin. Something
we saw a few weeks ago, was it at Long Beach, I think, where we had sort of a car park moment. Of course, it was Will Chadwick and Lorenzo Bonda talking you through that race, but it just reminded me of the fact that he drove backwards across the circuit, but managing to get away with it. We'll take another look on board in towards the right-hander at turn 7, and well, you definitely do get a different perspective when you ride on board, getting so close to the rear end of that Porsche. Having a bit of a look again, no way through, and Well, again, it's just so difficult. Squeezing his way through, desperate lunge, locked rears, off you go, round it goes in a bit. And that is Trivet, unfortunately, having a bit of an off, doing a 180 spin once again to get himself back onto the circuit. But the fight once more continues for P2 amongst the BMW M Hybrid V8s with just under 19 minutes left to go in this race. And while still waiting on a pit stop for some of these guys, we saw Alan Murray come in a few moments ago. So for these guys, it's a race against time to see where they emerge versus the 37.
Absolutely. It's a tricky time, and you never know exactly where they're going to come out because, of course, we mentioned the pit stop times can be slightly affected, but also where you come out in traffic can be a big factor. So sometimes you need to have a little eye on where the traffic is on the circuit, where sort of the cars are finding themselves. If there's a gap, and it just so happens to be that your pit window will take you out into that gap and you have free air for a few laps, that is going to obviously gain you those few tenths as you get the three classes going side by side down in towards turn 3 then. As you see, BMW's only just faster than the LMP2s as they just about get out of the way there of the Audi GT3. But that's really opened up that gap for Bradley, so that was an important move for that battle.
Was indeed, once again, getting a couple of cars, not only one, but two, between himself and the number 8 machine of Paulo Alexandre Lopez, who now has to get past not only the Audi, but also the LMP2 just in front. And we'll just look at the gap stretching, not just about in the same shot as they go down this backstretch towards turn number 7. But, well, that is definitely a big blow to Lopez's advances in second place in this race. Of course, it very much is a race per second, provided all things go well, to Christian Hilgard leading the way. His number 7 machine, 18.7 seconds. Now closing actually more over the 19-second mark as James Bradley gets caught up behind some traffic. And maybe that could be the saving grace that Lopez needs, but doesn't seem to be able to go his way as he catches them once again at a very awkward point. It's, again, speaks volumes about Belle Isle.
Certainly does. Just such a tight, tricky circuit. And if you get stuck behind literally one car, that's all it was there for Lopez, and that is enough to just one GTD, and that opens up that battle quite a lot. And as you see, one lap later is only just ahead of the LMP2 as well, just showing you how close those cars are on the lap times as we're getting Seteli coming into the pit lane with Bomi just behind actually. So Seteli for a moment there went up to P1, but Bomi comes back out into the race lead as we've got about 60 minutes to go with some other of the GT3s coming in. Bradley as well, also in the pit lane. So definitely the pit stop sequence just coming in for quite a few of these.
Oh, Bradley, we're being told, has actually towed himself back to the pit lane. Paulo Alexandre Lopez then takes himself back up into second place. So it's not necessarily the race against time versus Alan Murray that we were expecting with James Bradley, but well, now it's a 1v1 between Lopez and of course Murray. We're getting told it's a sad one when it comes to James Bradley. Well, just talk us through it, Cam. What's happened?
Yeah, so coming down is that turn 3 part of the track at the end of that front straightaway. On the brakes, on the grass, no grip, loses the rear end, and when you're sliding, just no room, and actually just about getting ahead. So just avoiding that LMP2 as well. Good thing he didn't move there. And that actually does make sense now, how he got back to the pit lane so quickly from where they were on the track. But just as you say, a very sad incident, just touching a wheel on the grass and losing the race because of it.
I can hear the violins playing now already. That was so sad. My heart genuinely dropped. I saw it and I was like, oh my God. Because we've all been there. That not necessarily at that exact corner, but that exact same mistake has happened to near enough anyone that has sim raced. The rear left, going on to a bit of grass, round you go. There is nothing you can do about that. And that is just pure F's in chat, really. It is all you can really say. That is such a premature end to James Bradley's sort of chances in this race. And, well, it's a shame because of the promise that he showed. His pace was sensational, able to pull the gap ahead of Lopez, but unfortunately just wasn't quite the case, as we've got a pretty good fight here for 14th in the GTDs.
Yeah, we certainly do. We've got Colin McCarthy leading a 4-car train of GT3 machinery, and this is, as you say, down for sort of 14th place or so in that class. We're looking at Carl Boss now, coming up towards the final couple of corners. They got obviously the BMW trying to get past them. Very difficult part of the track to do so. But McCarthy's holding on for this 14th place. And it seems to be working out quite well as it's moment in time. But they do have about a 10-second gap up ahead of them, which is obviously not ideal. So this is a really important battle for them for the lower parts of their class. And he's definitely doing a good job to hold on, because there's just a couple of tenths back to Larry Gordery, who's right in behind.
Indeed so, and well, this track very much is difficult and very much does reward track position all the way over to the right-hand side, actually. Bringing it back over to the left, the right-hand side of shot, of course, but taking onto the racing line. The Ferrari with a dive, contact! McCarthy sent round and bouncing off the wall, causing a bit of a car park. How everyone has been able to react to that fair play, especially to that Audi, able to very quickly dart to the right-hand side. Colin McCarthy, unfortunately, having a bit of a spin. That was Kyle Boss making a bit of contact with the Audi, and Garrett Wilburn, well, we saw him have a bit of a spin earlier on. Maybe that switched on his Spidey sensors with in terms of his awareness, because that was impressive not to cause further contact.
Yeah, great reactions there to avoid that, because of course it just hinders your race as well, because you get damage from it. Everyone gets a 4x for the contact, and it's just not really a good event for anyone when there's contact like that. So definitely a good job from those drivers to avoid that contact and the spinning driver. Not the easiest thing to do as well. As you're coming into a corner, you're already on the limit of the turn-in of the brakes. To then go beyond that and slow the car down sufficiently is certainly very difficult to do so. Let's see on board here with Larry Gowdery. Coming in towards the brake, so just way too late on the dive. Just front bumper to rear bumper, so late there into turn 3. Already really braking, turning into the corner, and maybe just lifting off the brakes a little bit to try and get the space, but yeah, too late, causing a crash.
Formal apology, of course, to Kyle Boss. It wasn't him that caused the contact. It was Larry Gordery that, again, easily done. I don't really think that was necessarily an intentional move. It was more, I've broken too late here. So what do? Oh, just go for a move. That's literally all I can do, and hope that they give you the space. Unfortunately, wasn't quite going to be the way the cookie crumbled for the 25 machine. But hey, we've all been there. You make mistakes, you learn from them, and you carry on. It's been a pretty good race up till that point for them. This is the 31 LMP2. Jose Sculer making his way past the Porsche. A bit of contact actually running their way through. A bit of wheel banging. That is certainly sketchy, not exactly what you would have liked, but I think actually this, no, it's not. It's actually not a very, very close fight at all for the mid part of the LMP2s. The closest fight is that fight between John Evans and Yeri Layton, 2.3 seconds between the two race leaders, but into the pit lane comes Sadokis Trivet, who, well, let's just say he's not exactly had the best of races.
Yeah, not enjoying the race, but it has been a pretty crazy race for the prototype classes. We've already lost effectively 3 of the BMWs, so we're really just down to 5, and there's already 2 LMP2s ahead as well. Of course, they still need to make a pit stop, potentially, if I'm not mistaken, but either way, Murray and Van Halle are behind LMP2s in the overall standings, which is rather crazy. Of course, we are looking at the result in class, but the fact that the LMP2s are mixed in overall is also just showing you how close they are around Belle here. Definitely an interesting choice for the calendar. It's been a little bit attritional, as we were expecting a few little crashes and spins here and there, but certainly that can be enjoyable as well, to have the more tricky tracks. It's nice to have the fast open tracks like Road America last week, but coming to the more street circuits, it's always a good twist to have on the calendar.
It's good to have a mix. I think, everyone, you get bored. I mean, you might not, but over the course of a 12-week season, you don't just want Grand Prix circuits. I mean, it is still the Grand Prix circuit, but you don't necessarily just want the full-on normal the open circuits like Road America, like the Nürburgring, etc., etc. You want some very, very tricky ones where you have to very much be on it from start to finish. There is no room for mistakes, and what it really does sort of turn it on and teach you like a lot about driving and consistency. So it's good to have that diversity, traveling to a lot of different circuits. We saw it actually with the RO4s over the last couple of seasons, going to the very much Grand Prix circuits, and then of course taking to the more club style circuits like Brands Hatch and Alton Park, etc., etc. And it's the same with IMSA in iRacing for this series, where again, it's just good to have that diversity and go to different circuits and to have a good mix, because, well, it's boring seeing the same circuits over and over and over again. Like maybe you could see with Spa, oftentimes it is a circuit that's overused because, well, it's Spa, fair enough, but you gotta have a good mix, which I think is very much important. Into the pit lane though in the LMP2s, Jere Leitonen, the pole sitter, of course, now in, trying to regain that 2.5 seconds back to John Evans, who now was leading the way, trying to get the undercut. Stephen Phillips as well, also into the pit lane. So now John Evans, this is crunch time, and same too for Leighton, and to really get those tyres back up to temperature and settle back into this race and just put the lap times back in the final 10 minutes of this race.
It's looking good for Leighton, at least for maybe half a lap. A little bit of clear air as we're getting Audi right on. And that says here, Setilli, they're up towards the front, leading the way in the GTDs a bit earlier, of course, and having to wait a long time to get going there. Was there contact, or was that just a personal mistake that is going to take him out of that battle for the race victory today?
Potentially could be. It might go the way of James Bomi, who now leads ahead of Mark Fletcher by 12.5 seconds. Daniel Setilli. That is very, very unfortunate. We'll ride on board and have a bit of a look as to how it's happened through the final couple of lefts of that very, very long complex from starting from turn 7 into the right, and just the cars just loop round on him. Again, I've never driven this circuit, so I don't necessarily know how you take it, but surely the weight shift of the car allows mistakes like that to happen. And well, the high curbs have come to bite, because at the moment he looks very, very beached. Of course, there is traffic and he is waiting to get himself going again, but not the point you want the car to be accelerating off of after a spin.
Yeah, just a very awkward situation where he was facing after the spin. He couldn't really do much. He could have done sort of a flick, just get it back, but then we did see the car, which I believe was actually Bomi there, going back past to take the lead at the time, just having to sit there as we're seeing Luke Mann come in. This is a car actually we did see in the wall a bit earlier on, maybe having some damage repairs to do at that pit stop as well. And Matthew Warner here, a little bit further down. It's one of the BMWs there was going a bit wide down the back straightaway. Radness there, not enjoying the braking zone potentially of that corner, but certainly still in that third place, but 45 seconds off the race lead. Definitely a spread out field today here at Belle Isle.
It is, unfortunately so. I mean, we've got a couple of pockets of close fights, but the gap between first and second in the BMW field, and that is not with a pit stop. Both Christian Hillgaard and Alexandre Lopez haven't actually come into the pit lane yet at all, which is bizarre, actually. Are they going for a no-stop? Could they go for a no-stop? There's 7 minutes left. Surely they've got to come in at some point, but the way they're going mightily long into this race. Surely it's got to be sketchy. John Evans also into the pit lane for the LMP2, so Juri Lehtinen is going to try and close the gap as much as possible. Fortunately for the 27 machine, it is going to be a shorter pit stop. That's going to be close in the fight for the lead in LMP2. Here comes Juri Lehtinen round the final corner across the pit straight. Has he been able to get the jump? He has. John Evans, and by quite a significant margin, a long time spent in the pit lane for the 27.
Yeah, that's interesting. Evans obviously staying out. I thought that might benefit because, of course, he's only got to put in 6.5 minutes of fuel, so not stopping for very long at all. But maybe it's something to do with traffic, who knows? Lehtinen, either way, has done a blinder on the strategy there, and that's by a good few seconds, so I think he's pretty much got this one sorted. 4 seconds in the bag for the race victory. Evans is going to have to do a really good job to try and catch that up. Of course, a bit of traffic might get involved, but 4 seconds with about 5 laps to go. That is looking very handy.
It is. I mean, Leighton has done himself a world of favours. Daniel Radner's up to 3rd place in the BMWs, but again, the top 3 still yet to come into the pit lane. The Undercut Racing team, watching along in the YouTube chat, of course, on RaceSpotTV, are going to be loving the fact that their driver has managed to take the lead after Valentin Bonni's woes early on. Juri Lehtinen now takes back the race lead after losing it in the early stages. John Evans, 2.9 seconds, teetering on the edge of 3 as they run their way through the traffic, but time very much is not on the side of the previous race leader of John Evans, who has to absolutely get his head into gear and really start driving the wheels off that guy, if not literally, and he can actually still have a good chance of closing on to the number 1 machine, but ticking off yet another lap and ticking off yet another opportunity for John Evans to find a way through. It's difficult to overtake over the course of the entire race here at Belle Isle, let alone when you've only got 5 minutes left on the clock. And well, McKaty, once again, seeing a bit of misfortune in this race.
Oh, getting almost dived by the LMP2 there down the inside. And yeah, that is unfortunate. Colin there was obviously up into that 14th place, was holding on for so long, but just losing, unfortunately, some positions there with that spin. A bit of damage was that potentially on the back as well. So I wonder if he's been hit from behind or if that is because of the spin and where he's hit the wall. Potentially, but interesting fact is the leader Hillgaard's still out there, 4.5 minutes to go. We did mention, of course, fuel tanks are reduced, but normally on most tracks is around 30 minutes for a full tank, so then you need to fill up about 15. They've gone a lot longer around this track, but that is of course because of the speed. Always there, contact with the LMP2 coming towards the fountain section. That is a very awkward place to overtake, but McCarthy's still there, just going offline though in that left-hander, losing the rear end, and just doesn't actually hit the wall. Damage is already there on the back.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, to say the least. Into the pit lane comes Daniel Muradnes with 4 minutes left to go. A very late pit stop then for the 21 machine, and well, loses third place, falling all the way back to last of the runners in the BMW M Hybrid V8 field. Rejoins in 5th place. Alan Murray now 3rd. It seems that if you can save the fuel, you might be looking pretty good in this race. I mean, for Christian Hillgaard, it's a home run anyway. I mean, you don't really have much lead. He's nearly got a lap on his own class in terms of P5 for Daniel Radness. He is absolutely flying out in front and has done since the start of this race. But could we see a no stop? Is it possible? 3.5 minutes left to go?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know if I quite finished the point before the pit stop there, but you can, because this track is so slow speed, you can save a lot of fuel. The issue is with like Road America last time out, most of that track is straights or sort of kinks as such. So you're a lot of time on the throttle to do the distance. Whereas here, all those 90-degree corners that we just came through, and then here as well, going around the fountain, you can lift off a lot, you can coast a lot, and you're spending a lot of time on the brakes, you're spending a lot of time just rolling through the corners as such. Even, especially this left-hander, you can just lift off, roll your way down into the hairpin, and you don't actually lose that much time. Because if you think about it, what you're going to gain by going flat out at that section? Not much. So you can save a lot of fuel with the average speed being so low. I don't know, can you gain 10 minutes, 30% on other tracks? I don't know, we're about to find out. 2.5 minutes to go. Hillgaard's still out there, and potentially it might be a splash and dash at the end, or might be going to the end. Either way, he's got 30 seconds to fall back into if he wants to slow down.
A couple of people managed it at Long Beach, so maybe it could just be the street circuit sort of ways that you have to lift and coast. Of course, as soon as you lift off, the throttle isn't open, you're not actually using the internal combustion engine, the fuel's not being burnt, so you can save quite a lot of it, and well, easily done of course. But surely the stop and go nature of a circuit like this, I mean, it is a street circuit, it does, I guess, actually, to be fair, flow quite well, but as soon as you're on the brakes, then you accelerate again, you're burning quite a lot of fuel. But I mean, clearly it's working, because well, they're still going 43 minutes into this race, only the couple of laps left to go. So Christian Hillgaard, Paulo Alexandre Lopez could be looking fairly comfortable for P1 and P2 in this race. Only time will tell. And when we did say strategy was going to come into a factor, I didn't actually mean this. I thought we were going to see undercuts and overcuts, not people trying to go all the entire race distance on one tank of fuel. Fair play to them if they manage it. Maybe that's why Lopez didn't put up much of a fight early on. And
it's pretty crazy that Hillgaard, though, can get that gap
pace, yeah,
while saving that amount of fuel, which just shows you it's not about the speed that you do it, it's about the efficiency that you do it, which is the important factor as well, as we're getting obviously the battles, as we said, even further down in some of these categories still go on. We've got almost 1 minute to go, as we're seeing now Matthew Warner there, about 30 seconds off, which is of course to the race leader, but just 8/10 ahead to that car ahead for the top 5. So certainly some opportunities as we come on to potentially the final lap of the race for some of these teams.
Potentially so, as the lap timer does say, lap 30 thought of 34. So Christian Hillgaard will watch him as he crosses the line. 44 seconds left on the clock, and well, he's running his way through. It could actually be quite close, but well, full respect to the number 7 machine. He's been on fire since the start of this race.
Yeah, he certainly has, and as we're saying, leading by about 35, 36 seconds in a 45-minute race. That is absolutely outrageous. It's been certainly a race that has opened up the gaps. The attrition has been there as well. He just gets let through past another car. He's just got a few more cars, a few more corners to navigate before we taking victory around 11. Just opening up. Let's see what we can do with just 1 week to go here for Season 1 of 2023.
Indeed so, Christian Hillgaard from pole to victory. He's only got a couple more corners left to go before he sees the checkered flag before anyone else. 35.5 seconds clear. Paulo Alexandre Lopez, round 11 of Friday Night Primetime. The IMSA iRacing Series goes the way of Christian Hillgaard and the BMW M Hybrid V8s. What a race. 0 stops. smashed it. Jere Leitonen, P1 for the LMP2s, 1.4 seconds clear of John Evans just in behind. What a fight it was between them two, but a very, very good strategical call by the number one machine sees him take victory around Detroit Belle Isle. James F. Bomey will take the victory in the GTDs by quite some margin to seize the checker flag first, but Lauren de Rijk, unfortunately, having a very, very late spin. We'll catch that race leader as much as we can in the final lap. Of course, he's pretty much in cruise mode in the fact that he is very comfortably won this race, and well, fair play to him because he's won the race of attrition.
Yeah, the gaps have been pretty crazy, and of course, Cecily there giving him the race victory really in some respects in terms of having a fight, but Bomey had the car where he needed to. We said it's a race of attrition, and that means that you yourself just have to get to the end of the race first, and you might have an opportunity of winning. And Bomey certainly did a good strategy, kept it in between the walls, didn't hit them, and managed to obviously take it back to the end of the race.
Brilliantly done, and well, he himself has only got a couple more corners left to go. Flash the lights in the Audi R8. The number 6 machine has driven phenomenally, will be counted as a lap ahead of his field. Cross the line, victorious in the GTDs for the penultimate round of Friday Night Primetime, the inaugural season of 2023, soon to come to an end. But well, what a show we had. We'll talk you through the race results. The GTDs, of course, first up, James Bomey, P1, and well, clearly he lapped the entire field there. Mark Fletcher and Felipe Pascal, your podium, with Daniel Sotile and Matthew Warner, your top 5. Then come Jack Sanchez and Gregory Bellingzelli in P7. Adam Watson, Philip Harold, Mason Smith, your top 10, with, well, of course, the rest of the field yet to come. And well, we'll actually only roll through the top 10 because, well, the GTDs were quite a long one. LMP2's up next. Jere Leitonen, John Evans, and Stephen Phillips, your podium for the second class in the IMSA iRacing series. Then comes Barlow, Luke Mann, your top 5. Matthew Sadokis, Trivets, despite some poor showings, still managing to bring home P6. Then comes Skulik, the 31 machine, in P7. Martin de Jong, Valentin Bonney, and Paul Darling, your top 10. A couple of them not making it to the end of this race. 34 laps of racing action, of course, and well, only 1.4 seconds separating the top 2. Now on to the BMW M Hybrid V8s. Christian Hillgaard, well, what? He did all the talking on track. 0 stops for himself and Paulo Alexandre Lopez see them take first and second in this race. Alan Murray completes the podium with Stephanie Van Halle P4, Daniel Radness 5th, James Bradley, Andres Frederick, and Joshua Ahern unable to make it to the checker flag, and a 1:18.179 for Christian Hillgaard. Despite the fact he was saving fuel for the entire race, still had enough in the tank to not only win the race by 38 seconds, but also get the fastest lap for good measure as well. And well, Cam, I mean, that, to be fair, in a race that we didn't see the sensational side-by-side battles that we often would really get hyped and excited about, that race still left us on the edge of our seats.
Yeah, that was a nice race around Belle Isle. Didn't know what to expect coming into this. I think it's first race actually potentially commentating on this track. It's certainly a very interesting one, but a very enjoyable one. And even though Belle Isle, of course, isn't going to be used this year in 2023 with the new street track coming, it's certainly good to keep his legacy here on iRacing. And that was a nice one. But just one race to go in season 1 of 2023, and it's certainly been a fun and enjoyable season here at the IMSA iRacing series.
It has been indeed. Well, one more round left to go. March the 3rd, 2023, at 8:45 p.m. GMT. For those of you in the UK, translate that to whatever time zone you are in around the world. You are not going to want to miss it. We take to the bumps of the Sebring International Raceway for round 12, the final round of season 1 in 2023 for the IMSA iRacing series. It's going to be an absolute barnstormer of an event. It's been myself, Zach Sweeney, Cameron Roger alongside me in the commentary booth, EQ Mary Carla behind the scenes, trying to keep up with everything that came our way in terms of action on the race circuit. But that was Belle Isle around the streets of Detroit. What a race it was. And well, we do it one more time before the vote goes up again for season number 2 in 2023. It will be us back in the commentary booth in a week's time. Do not miss it. But in the meantime, have a fantastic week. Take care. And bye-bye.